By the time you find out that a customer is potentially looking to buy your product, 80% of the buyer's journey is already done.
Welcome to a new episode of Revenue Architects. This podcast is tailored for revenue leaders navigating the evolving landscape of sales, RevOps, and revenue management. It's not often that we get to talk about the impact of partnerships and a partner channel as it relates to RevOps, which is why I'm so excited to jump into the conversation with our guest. Today, we have Antonio Caridad, Senior Director of Partner RevOps and Strategy at Logic Monitor. Antonio has been building partner channels for multiple companies in his career, and he's here to share his expertise with us. Antonio, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Thank you for having me, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Give us a quick introduction on how you got into both partnerships and then into revenue operations.
Good question. I don't think anybody actually says, hey, I'm going to grow up to be a partnerships pro. The way all of us that are in partnerships have that little joke. But the reality is that I'm an engineer. I'm a telecom engineer. I worked in telecom, not in partnerships, not in sales. For many years, I was doing a little bit more after college. I was doing a little bit more of corporate finance and a couple of other things and some technical work there. I'm originally from Mexico. I decided to come to the US to get my MBA, and out of business school, IBM hired me. And IBM threw me into the world of partnerships. They said, hey, you'd be really good at this thing we call channel sales. Let's give it a try. And I never looked back. That was many blue moons ago. So I spent 10 years at IBM building my expertise in partnerships, building partner programs, owning routes to market, owning partner ecosystems, owning the strategy. And one of the things that I realized throughout that in the next company that I worked for is the fact that as a partner leader, you rarely get help from ops. Sales tends to have sales ops. Marketing now these days tends to have more ops. If the company is mature enough, if your go-to-market engine is mature enough, the company might have RevOps. But the one commonality is that most partner leaders are in a little bit of an island by themselves, fending for themselves, and doing this second job that is the operational side of that, right? And so I decided that my engineering mind always attracted me to that side as well, just because it's easy for me to understand process. It's easy for me to understand metrics. And my head does that. My head thinks that. And I decided to start carving myself a niche into RevOps. And so little by little, I started finding myself more involved in that, until finally decided, okay, let's get out of the sales side and let's be this conduit and this bridge between the rest of the go-to-market engine and the partner team on an island that brings that island, that pulls that island to be part of the continent, right? And so that's how I found myself in my last three roles owning global partner strategy and global partner operations and partner RevOps.
Great. I'm honestly super excited because I'll tell you one thing. If you look at any top 10 companies today, majority of them have grown with partner ecosystem. Take Oracle, Salesforce, SAP. We thought that they will crush through the market on their own, but they are not. What they are doing is they're partnering with AWS, they're partnering with these Google, and the surprising thing is they're giving literally 6-figure grants to use AWS Bedrock and Claude to deploy agents.
Yep.
One of my customers told me yesterday and I was saying, wow, okay. And that is the real excitement, right? And I'm surprised that there are not many RevOps leaders like you. I'm really surprised. Companies really need to have that, right? So this is going to be a very interesting conversation. And my first question, Antonio, to you is that you mentioned that using these renewal signals and partner insights to identify churn risks long before they show up in forecast. So what are those leading indicators you trust most and how do you operationalize them across the business?
That's a good question. That's anyone's question. This operational things across a business is going to be different from business to business, right? It's not like you can take a blueprint and say, I'm going to do that.
Correct.
In my next company, because variables and the vectors are going to be completely different, right? Just trying to build a partner ecosystem, you cannot just say, I'm just going to do what Microsoft did to get to 95% of their revenue coming from partners.
Yeah.
You're not Microsoft. Just not going to happen, right? I hear somebody like, hey, we're going to open the hood and I'm going to show you everything about the partner program. The strategy of Microsoft is cool. Most people already know it. And it's not like I can just rip it and copy it. So The standpoint of taking a look at leading indicators and forecasting customer behaviors, the most important thing is a lot of people take forecast calls and stand-ups. We don't want to read the news, we want to make the news. So
Wow.
everybody should be coming into those conversations informed and ready to speak about the actions that are going to happen and not what already happened. What already happened, everybody has access to Salesforce, HubSpot, or whatever CRM you use. Everybody can go in and understand what's happened, right? But not everybody knows what needs to happen. Also, forecast should not only be about predictability and predicting where you're going to land. Forecast should be about not just deciding like, hey, I'm just going to be okay with my destiny. It's about changing your destiny, right? It's about how do you understand what's coming down the line and how can you change the outcomes, be it churn, be it pull forwards, be it potential upsells, cross sells, et cetera, right? And so I think that's where a lot of companies fail. And especially when it comes to partner and customer behavior, there are things that you can definitely take a look at, right? It's not just surface level things that you can find in Salesforce. They're leading indicators that normally you cannot find in Salesforce, like adoption and utilization of your product, right? If it's stagnant, is it going up, if it's going down, if they are at full capacity and they're not looking to expand and grow, why is that, right? Whenever you have meetings with the customer, your customer success team or your renewals team or whoever is having meetings with the stakeholders on the customer side or in the partner side and the executives stop coming, that's a little bit of a signal, right? If a couple of other things, if your support tickets are escalating, again, those things rarely tend to appear in Salesforce unless you're using your CRM as a support ticket system, right? Even though some of them are able to, a lot of companies don't do it. And so if you're not listening to those little signals that don't appear necessarily on a download and dump of a report from your CRM, you're missing that, right? And then from a partner perspective, your partners hold the trust of the customers in the ecosystem, right? There is a fantastic analyst that writes a lot and speaks a lot, and he's one of the most brilliant people I've met, Jay McBain. There's about 28 moments in a customer buyer's journey. And alone, as a company, as a vendor, we can only influence maybe 4 or 5, which means that there's 23 to 24 moments out there that are up for grabs. And the only way that you can influence or impact or touch those moments is through partners. And if you are not relying on those partners that hold the trust, that are in the water holes where your customers are, and you're not listening to them, guess what? It's not going to happen. Because also, by the time you find out that a customer is potentially looking to buy your product, 80% of the buyer's journey is already done.
Yeah,
You're
that's true.
you're way too late at that point. And so you are truly in Hail Mary mode, trying to see if the customer might have interest, right? But at 80% of the buyer's journey done, there's a lot of things in their brain, potentially misconceptions that already are beliefs, and you're late, right? And so the important thing here is to get out of that CRM and really start to listen to the signals that are out there. Again, for working with partners, they hold the trust and you need to get early in front of them to understand what are you hearing from the customer? How can we potentially grow this account? Are they responding or not? Another thing is you might be a great product, but it takes you 6 months to implement and 6 months for a customer to see value in a 1 year cycle. Guess what? More likely than not, that customer is not going to renew or is not going to be happy because they're paying for a year. They're getting 6 months out of it, right? So you need to start understanding those things around your support, those things around your implementation, those things around the signals that your partners can take from the customers that you can't, and listen to that. And a lot of that doesn't appear in your CRM.
Amazing. A couple of astounding thinking about the implementation risk, especially if you're dependent on another technology that kind of partners with it, right? If they miss their window by a few months, that puts yours out, and like how the pricing considerations, the relational concerns, churn risk, all changes based on what's happening with anyone else you're having to partner with. Oh, the hardware didn't show up, whatever, if they didn't get their act together. But then the other part about, and I've seen this in my own life where it's executive absence or changing in executive behavior, you start to see that they just stop. And it's a signal that I would have been like, hey, where's such and such? Or why is this happening? I would see that signal, but it was definitely nowhere put in the systems that would register executive absence or a change in executive behavior from they were here for 5 meetings and now they're not anymore. For that might be fully justified, hey, it's a handoff, or now they just are disinterested. what's the
Yeah,
difference,
or
right?
even maybe they show up, but your conversations with them, instead of being proactive and how do we grow and adoption and how do I learn to do more with it and so on and so forth, they become more about, hey, we have all these tickets, they're not solved, we have all these issues. And maybe they're not
Mm,
telling you, hey, we're gonna drop, but those conversations and those sessions are more complaint sessions than
yeah.
proactive sessions, right? Those things, you absolutely need to listen to them. Now, the beautiful part about partnerships is that you touched a little bit on this, Steve. Whenever you integrate with other products, whenever you integrate with other third parties, where your better together story becomes stronger because the value proposition becomes stronger, now you're solving not one, not two, maybe three, four, five different things, stickiness goes up. Because at
Hmm.
that point, once a customer is integrated into that and it's fully operating at it, assuming, to your points, assuming that implementation was done on time and all of that flowed correctly, it's harder for a customer to turn from one, two, three, four products that are fully integrated, because then you're talking about having to find four different solutions or five different solutions for what they already have solved, right? Stickiness goes up the roof. And there's studies and surveys out there. I remember Crossbeam had a very robust set of metrics at some point that there was a company, I can't remember the top of my head, but after three integrations, I think stickiness went up 131% or something like that. If anybody wants to get that stat, I do have it bookmarked somewhere. Just ping me and I'll give you that one. But yeah, it's the flip side of the equation, right?
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned how partner involvement is always accelerating deals dramatically, but a lot of times the AE still try to go at it alone.
Okay.
So why does that disconnect still persist? And how do you create the habits when you pull partner motions into deals earlier? What does that look like to make sure that the AE doesn't go it alone when it comes to building good relationships?
The $1 million question that a lot of partner pros tend to have around different industries. And in my experience, there's not a silver bullet all the time, but in my experience, more likely than not, and more often than not, it just lands always in alignment. That is at the very bottom, it normally lands in compensation. And so what happens? Compensation drives behavior, right? AEs are coin operated, and they're coin operated to get or to do the path of least resistance for them to get paid, and for them to get to quota, and for them to get to their accelerators, and for them to make their target, right? And more often than not, those compensation models are not aligned. You have your channel routes to market through partners. It could be managed services, resale, GSIs, agencies, whatever you name it. And then you have your direct route. And what happens is that in compensation models, you don't have them neutral. They're not neutralized. And what that
Hmm.
means is that from an AE perspective, you're incentivized to do one thing or the other, because that's what's going to pay you more. That's what's going to allow you to retire quota faster. It's going to allow you to get your target into your accelerators faster, right? And so more often than not, that's what happens, that lack of alignment. But also, step one is to have things neutralized and to ensure that the element of how much money goes into my pocket is out of the equation. Right. And so from a seller perspective, if a partner is involved in a deal against if a partner is not involved in a deal, I get paid the exact amount. That's the first and most
Yeah.
basic important element that everybody needs to get right. And a lot of people still get wrong. Second thing is now making sure that AEs understand the value of partners, right? At my past works, we have proven that deals with partners are bigger, are larger. The deals where partners close faster, and that your win rate
Okay.
with partners are higher, right? And so from an AE perspective, if the money in my pocket is exactly the same, regardless of partner being in there. But I know that when a partner is involved, and obviously it has to be the right partner. There's good partners, there are
Sure.
bad partners, right? But the right partner is involved. I know that the likeliness of my deal closing faster and me getting to quota is faster. That's a check mark. That makes sense to me. The likelihood that my deal is going to be two, three, four times larger. Hey, I get to quota faster. That's a check mark. And then the likelihood that my deal will actually close because the customer has trust in the partner that we don't have. And then the
Hmm.
partner is bringing another element of benefit and value to the customer that you alone cannot do. And also that's another check mark in my box. And so from an A perspective, smart AEs, the way they think is like, why would I play the game in hard
Yeah.
mode when I can partner with the partner team and bring a partner into this in plain easy mode?
I mean,
Right.
I got
So
to
yeah,
push back though on the same compensation then. If you're
right.
closing deals faster that are larger, I would definitely think compensation leaning towards using partners should be elevated in some manner. You should
Yeah.
get a better. I would definitely, as a CRO, I would be thinking if these close faster and bigger with better margins and lower churn risk, I want those. So I would compensate in that direction.
Your strategy is to become much more channel and partner focused and more ecosystem focused, the likes of Microsoft. That's absolutely the way you want to go. As long as it's defensible and you can back it up, obviously you're paying a little bit more in those deals to attract those deals and to work those deals. That makes a lot of sense, right? Now, obviously, from a partner strategy, you always have to understand that partners are not there to just be your pipeline generation channel.
Sure.
And this is where a lot of companies fail. They're not there
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
the work for you, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Partners are not there.
it's gotta go both ways.
It's not a zero sum game. Everybody has to benefit, right? So, from a perspective, you want to go down that kind of strategy and put that in place. You need to make sure that your partnerships are solid and that the partners are getting as much benefit as you are from working with you, from integrating with you, from reselling your product, from doing managed services around your product, you name it. Otherwise, that is going to dry up real fast.
Sure.
No, I think you said exactly what I'll say majority of the companies don't do. And two things they do. One, what you said is I'm getting a free sales channel, right? And honestly, as a services company, we get almost 2 partner requests a week because you can build a great product, but where is the distribution channel, right? You need distribution channel and trusted partners who have trusted customers, they can take it there. But you said it very correctly. It cannot be just a one-way street saying that keep giving me opportunities and leads, right? And I'll give you some commission if it works out, right? It is
Yeah.
like hiring a sales guy and saying that if you sell and if you make money, then I'll pay you. How is he going to survive? And the second important thing I wanted to ask you, completely different from our discussion, is a lot of companies are also focused on selling to partners. So you have to buy my license. So you use it internally. Without you having a license, you cannot do this, right?
Yeah.
And they're not truly enabling, saying that here is it, I'll train you, right? I'm not looking at money from you, I'm looking at joint deals from both of us. Let's build our business. No, I've not seen, at least unfortunately, a single partner coming with that mindset. So what would you say for that?
So it all starts with just like when you build an ideal customer profile and ICP in your company, you need to build an IPP, an ideal partner profile. And it's a profile that revolves around your ICP. You cannot build an IPP without an ICP. You need to understand and have a very strong ICP to understand what are the partners that surround those customers that buy your product, those ideal customers that buy your product. Then you'll start understanding the nature, the shape, the color of those partners, right? What happens to a lot of companies is, especially early companies, is they go on a spray and pray mode with partners where just because it's a flashy logo, oh, I want them as a partner. That doesn't mean that they're going to be a good partner. That doesn't mean that they're an aligned, right? So you have to have a very robust ideal partner profile to understand who has the potential to be the right partner that is not going to waste your time and you're not going to waste their time. Important. Companies change, companies evolve, right? An ideal partner today could not be an ideal partner 2, 3 years down the line. Just because strategies merge, market opportunities change, and those kind of things. But once you have an ideal partner profile, you can start identifying who the right partners are, right? And it's based on, it could be industry expertise, it could be capabilities, it could be services, it could be your better together story, it could be their willingness to partner with you and their excitement, it could be buy-in. You can build an IPP in many ways. If you search ideal partner profile, you're probably going to get at least 4 or 5 different frameworks in the first Google page, right? But after that, the important thing is that it's not just sign a partner and that's good. One of my biggest pet peeves in the partnerships world is partner signed. To me, it's one of the most useless and biggest vanity metrics that are out there. Whenever somebody comes and tells me we've signed 100 partners in the last month, I'm like, cool
Oh
story.
no.
That tells me nothing. And so
Right.
the important thing is to make sure that it doesn't stay in the world of signing a contract and a paper partnership. It's what's the strategy that you're implementing? What are the joint marketing and sales plans that you're building? What is your North Star? What are the joint goals? What is your cadence around MBRs, QBRs, and potentially if you're at that level, EBRs? What's your level of multi-threading within the organization where you're all of your team, and it's not only you. You should not be a single point, like a bottleneck that is like, if you want to talk to this partner, you need to go through me, right? No, marketing should be talking to marketing, sales should be talking to sales, executives should be talking to executives. You are the orchestrator as a partner manager. But I think once you get into that level of a partnership, Jay, if you're at the right level, you can even be signing MOUs with potential
Mhm.
commitments on both sides, and you have teeth into it. That's where things get fun, right? Because then you can start from an operational perspective, which is what me and my team does. You can start getting into a cadence with them around forecasting. You can start getting into a cadence around co-selling. You can start getting into a cadence around joint marketing events and joint marketing activities and joint sales activities. And that's where you start getting into it. But now, to get to that point, again, to our earlier point, there needs to be a win on both sides. There needs to be benefit on both sides, and it cannot be a zero-sum game.
It's so interesting to think about, like, we do this, as Jay said, we get a lot of offers, but how much time are you going to be able to invest, right? But also, how effective are they at being able to both invest in you, to learn what you're doing, to put you in front of the right people, to put a plan together, to align your marketing efforts, right? All of those things, it's from a company our size, we can't do. We had 5 of them, and that's all we do is just manage those things. And that's not going to be wise. And as a company grows, obviously, but setting the stage for how a partnership RevOps operates, or even the partner channel operates, is there's a whole lot more involved than just saying, oh, I got a partner manager.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go. And like, he's just going to run partnerships. That's not successful. If you're chasing that metric of how many partnerships you set up, you're not going to get there. So let me ask you about that. There's this element around this kind of the execution of revenue. And whereas on the inside, you have your internal teams, AEs, customer success teams, RevOps, all influencing the outcomes. But like, how do you create the accountability without creating confusion of the ownership of the client, the process, other things? But I'd love to hear how that handles the same way as when you're lining up with other partners or setting up new partners.
It's a good question. I don't know that it has a simple answer, but I think it boils down to execution and ownership against execution and contribution. Right? I'm trying to think of an analogy. The first one that comes to my head, because I've used it before, is flying a plane. Who is the owner of flying a plane? Who has ownership of flying a plane? The pilot, right? The pilot. But the pilot alone and flying a plane alone cannot happen without everyone else involved, from technicians servicing the plane, from people on air control and air traffic, making sure that the plane takes off and lands fine and safely, everybody on the ground making sure that the plane will be able to land and take off safely, everybody that is operating and working the plane, from air stewardess and other people. When the plane is in flight, you have a co-pilot, and without all of that supporting cast, it's just not gonna happen. The pilot's going to fly the plane, right? So I think it's the same thing in go-to-market engine. It's a team sport. It's not a single sport, right? You cannot just expect the AE to go out there and magically make deals happen without the supporting cast, right? Without marketing driving demand, without the partner team creating the conduit and the elements for a partner to be able to collaborate with you and potentially provide introductions, to sell with you, et cetera, without RevOps doing all of the things and managing all of the operations internally that make this happen, without a leader driving the strategy, and in many cases, getting in front of executives to close or grease the wheels or whatever you name it. It just doesn't happen that way. So I think it boils down to, again, ownership against contribution. And one of the things that I like to do is RACI models. And so basically outlining within your go-to-market engine who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consultative, who's informative, and all the tasks that need to happen in a sales cycle, from demand and lead generation all the way to deal close, and even past deal close, right? Customer life cycle, retention and churn prevention, all of that. And I forgot to mention customer success and the retention team and support. It's all supporting tasks, right? And so within a RACI model, you're able to discern and understand who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consultative, who's informative. And that way, everybody understands from process over the machinery what cog or what wheel they are in there and how they contribute. And if their piece breaks, guess what? The whole thing either breaks or starts not working very well.
There's a lot of
So,
planes on the same landing strip, right?
so hopefully,
But how do you build the RACI model, right? But there's the ownership. Like, how has that looked in your career where you walk in and you're like, okay, I'm going to try to put this, everybody can have a RACI model, but not everybody holds, like I
Holds
got
it,
a piece
yeah.
of paper somewhere and it's in my Google Drive. And I have no idea. I saw it once in a meeting. But how do you take ownership of that? Or is it that your role there to do that or to help guide someone else to be able to manage that more effectively? What does that look like for you in the way that you operate or getting that set in place so that everybody starts to work in an orchestrated fashion?
that's a good question. It starts with leadership, right? Leadership has to preach and follow suit and lead as such to make sure that everybody is contributing and that everybody understands the importance of their work within this, right? The second thing is whenever you celebrate wins, don't just celebrate the AE. Celebrate everybody that contributed to the deal. There's a lot of unsung heroes out there. They don't get to go to President's Club. So make sure, and I understand from a budget perspective, but that perspective, make sure that you celebrate and you highlight everybody that contributes to whatever's happening, right? Like support and ops and other teams don't get to get the commission checks and don't get to go to President's Club and all that. So make sure that you celebrate your wins and that you're naming everybody. And then from the perspective of whenever you're inspecting deals, maybe this doesn't happen in forecasting conversations with your leadership, right? But whenever you're inspecting deals, bring the whole team. You need not only the voice of your AE, you need everybody that participated in the deal, depending on where you're in the stage, right? If you're later in the stage, maybe you don't need the team that talked about it earlier or that operated earlier, right? But involve them in those conversations so that they actually feel involved as part of the machinery, right? And that's when everybody feels involved and when everybody feels like, hey, I'm contributing towards one goal and we have a very clear strategy, one very clear goal, that's where you start getting buy-in, right? It's the times when some people are taking credit for other things, when people are just not seen or rewarded, and especially when the leaders are not leading.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, so you either have to normalize the construct of a RACI to teach leadership on how to lead it. If I'm going to come here and do this, you're going to have to help me enforce this, right? The other side of it is I either need your buy-in, your support, or you're leading this. Here's your RACI, lead it, right? However the organization needs to be set up based on the way that company operates. But then on the execution side of things, there's an element there where it's, okay, how do you, as the partner leader, make sure that you create the ecosystem you need to be successful by being able to help others understand how all this is supposed to look. Because the way you understand partnerships obviously is different than a lot of people. They make a lot of the same mistakes. They set up, how many partnerships should we set up? And you're like, that's not the model you need to be building because it's going to drive you into a lot of wasted effort.
A lot of wasted effort and a lot of wasted resources.
They're like, we think we know what we want. And then they'll say, how many partnerships? And you're like, I need one great partnership. And you're like, I need you to do 5. And you're like, again, that's not what I need. I need 2.
No, in fact, to Steve's point, we are extremely cautious about signing a partnership because one important aspect is also it needs to fit into the strategic vision of both the companies. It cannot be a tactical thing saying, oh, it's going to increase my sales, I'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a conversation. It's funny you say that, Jake. A conversation I had with a CRO a few years back where the CRO asked me, like, so how can I attract a GSI like Accenture or Deloitte to work with us? And I'm like, let's get down to basic economics. What's your average deal size? It's about $20,000, $25,000. Okay. And unit economics based on your size of the company tells me maybe you're able to give them 20% margin, right? He's like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, okay. You think Accenture is going to open the door for $5,000? The strategy is you need to grow that average deal size. You need to ensure that you're able at some point in unit economics to provide a little bit more margin. But more than anything, Accenture does not, or Deloitte do not care about a 20% margin. Even in very large deals, that's a drop in the bucket for them. Yeah. What they care is about all the potential services that they can add on top of you. Are you right for that? No. Okay, then you're not there yet.
But one thing also I will say is that what I have seen working for big companies, having partnerships, now doing my own organization and trying to sign partnerships. And especially this happened during COVID and now it has amplified during AI era. You might be small, your deal size might be 20,000. Just a different point is, but if your product is going to transform them into the new era of AI or new era of how post-COVID things are going to happen, then it still fits into their strategic vision. And it happened to us, right? As a services company, last year we were worried saying that AI is now building code, right? What's going to happen to us? 100 plus people, what's going to happen? And when I and Steve went around and did, and long story short, but what we realized is we did partner with certain companies who we felt will transform us from being old style services to an AI-led services company, right? Even though the deal size was honestly nothing in most of the cases, we are only bringing them. In fact, we funded some of the roundtables that we did with our customers, bringing these guys in. But that also can be another angle to think about, saying that how do I sit? Does our product fit into any of the strategic goals, 2, 3 goals that our GSI is been behind, right? And you can find that pretty easily nowadays.
Yep, absolutely.
But I want to move on in interest of time, definitely to AI, because without AI, you can't conclude a conversation nowadays. You know?
We managed this far without an AI conversation.
In this case, we normally ask what is a modern revenue stack to RevOps. But in your case, the question is going to be a little different, right? Because you primarily are making partners successful and your company successful through partners. That's the goal you are doing. So in that situation, where do you see AI can really play an instrumental role in this relationship?
Good question. I think first and foremost, I'm glad we got to this point in the conversation without talking to AI about AI. And the reason why I say this is we are very AI ingrained and we use it for many use cases in many ways. But the important thing is I'm a firm believer of you need to get your fundamentals right before you can think about AI. And I'm not saying like 100% right. You need to get basic fundamentals right. Otherwise, AI is just a way to exacerbate your problems at scale, right? And the important thing here is that you have to have good data. Nobody has perfect data, but at the very minimum, you should have good data that allows you to think, okay, whatever I input in should give me good outputs. Because bad inputs, bad outputs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to look at where you can add value the most. In a lot of cases, the simplest things, the less flashy, are the ones that are prime and ripe for you to come in and implement some sort of agent or AI automation that allows you to take people out of manual work. In the partner world, identifying the right partner. You can build an IPP with AI that allows you to say, hey, is this the right partner? Yes, no. This is a scoring methodology and this is a scoring rubric. There are tools out there that are fantastic for this, but if you don't have the luxury of being able to pay for something like that, or your partners just don't want to integrate with it and because it has to be a mutual thing, how can you incorporate AI and agents and potential automation to do account mapping? Right. And that takes your partner managers out of manual work with the partner on a monthly or weekly basis to identify potential accounts to go after and so on and so forth. Right. How can I solve other kind of like manual work? That's where you're going to be able to add value and solve things. So the very and most important thing that you need to take into consideration is where can I add value the fastest? AI doesn't replace, I'm a firm believer that AI doesn't replace operations. AI amplifies operations and makes them much more efficient, right? So you have to lead with value and you have to have the right fundamentals and you have to have decent data in order for it to work. And from there, you can start thinking of, for example, how can I automate and how can I bring AI into forecasting, right? So having a tool like maybe, for example, Coefficient, it's a tool that is built to understand your CRM, I think more specifically Salesforce, and provide insights daily, weekly, whatever you want on specific accounts and tell me like, where's the risk? What are you seeing here based on the movement on the accounts and notes, etc. You still need the right inputs, right?
Sure.
If an AE is not keeping the notes and the data and the opportunity up to date, guess what? AI is just as good as the data that it has.
Maybe that's the question you ask AI, like which of these accounts has not been updated in a week? And you're like, okay, it doesn't matter where they are first. Just tell me, hey, I need you guys to update what's going on with these 4 accounts.
So you can automate those kind of things. Exactly. You can have an agent that is looking at all of that and is pinging AE and telling them like, hey, what's the fault? And that takes your leader, your VP, your RVP out of manually having to chase AEs and freeze time in their day, right? It's those little things that maybe they're not flashy and maybe they're not sexy, right? But that's where you can add the most value these days, especially as we're starting to get into an age where everybody wants AI. But now I was reading an article the other day of how top executives now want to put AI on a diet because now the floodgates are open and everybody sees the potential. But now
Yeah.
everybody's starting to realize the cost of tokens, right? And so it's holy hell, how much is it costing me? Somebody was talking about an AI agent to do, I don't remember exactly what task, but the cost of tokens on a yearly basis was something like $350,000. And they're like, this AI agent is now a VP because we automated all of this, but at what cost, right?
So I was actually thinking you should let us help you build the RACI agent for you that manages when such happens. Then the RACI agent goes out and does all the things and makes sure everybody,
There you go. That's a perfect example. An AI agent that is asking everybody. So you're responsible here, you're
Yep.
accountable here, you're consultative here. What's your point of view? What's your take? What's your input?
Yeah, this would be all the racy. What do you need me to email them? You need me to inform them? You need me to consult with them? You
Next
set up
step
a
is
meeting, set up a call.
exactly. There you go.
I hate that we are running out of time, but I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you. And this has been such an important conversation because it's so vital to businesses that are growing. I just feel that there's an element, it's just that often this is misunderstood and overlooked, or sometimes just done poorly. And so I just can't thank you enough for giving us such great insights into this. I have taken more notes than I have ever done in one of these conversations and look forward to sharing this with everyone. So Antonio, thank you for coming. And for everyone else, I want to thank you for listening in. And if you would like and subscribe and share with individuals, other people in businesses that are thinking about partnerships or trying to manage partnerships, this is such valuable information to understand the architecture and the strategy around building the right kind of partner RevOps process. So if you would, feel free to share it, like it, subscribe, and we look forward to giving you more great insights on the Revenue Architect podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Anthony. It
Thank
was
you.
fun.